And thank you all for joining us this afternoon. It's a beautiful day in Central Ohio, and I appreciate you taking the time to spend your lunch hour with us instead of being out in the sunshine. I'm Jane Harf, Executive Director of Green Energy Ohio, and I want to welcome you to the third in our series of coronavirus clean energy in the age of coronavirus. I got it backwards. Today, we have more information about the series on our website, which I encourage you to go to, including bios of today's speakers. So I'm not gonna go through that because you can read those, and I don't want to take away from our time together. Today, we are very pleased to have two leaders from outstanding nonprofit organizations, great partners with GEO. Both organizations are great partners with GEO. Tristan Rader from Solar United Neighbors and Sarah Conley-Ballew from Rural Action. I'm going to go through the instructions as I always do, and I'm going to look at my little cheat sheet, which you'd think by now I would know by heart. Everyone on the call will be muted unless you are called on or you raise your hand. In order to raise your hand, there's a little button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and you can do that. And if you do that, it's at the bottom of the list of participants. If you raise your hand and want to ask a question in person, we will call on you. If you want to just type in a question in the chat function, please do that. That's what most people have been doing. I think everyone on the first two calls did it that way. So if you want to type in a comment or a question, go to the chat function and type something in, and we will see it. I encourage you to do it, particularly if you have a question, get that in the queue. We don't want to wait till the last minute with our guests and have a whole bunch of questions. So be sure to think about what you would like them to discuss if we haven't touched on it, and we will start. I want to start with a question for both of you, actually. Nonprofits are always the first to feel the hit in any kind of economic downturn. And I can attest to that, having worked for several. The impact of the coronavirus is no different. So, it's interesting. You have a lot in common, but some differences. Tristan, you have a national organization with whom Ohio Sun is affiliated, whereas Rural Action is unique to Ohio. So I'm just wondering how the two of you and your organizations dealt with the recent shutdown and perhaps any economic questions that came along with that. Tristan, you want to start?
Sure.
I'll point to you.
Appreciate it. And thank you so much for hosting us. It's, like you've said, we've been a proud partner of GEO for many, many years. So thank you for your work and for allowing us to be here. So yes, the economic downturn has had a pretty big impact, significant impact on nonprofits across the board, including Solar United Neighbors. I think we're very fortunate. We, like many organizations, took advantage of the CARES Act forgivable loan program that has kept us sort of afloat at the national level. And also, we know that rolling into this year of grant funding cycles, things have become more competitive. So we're just making sure we have our message where it's always been, sharp, to the point, and we're going to continue to do the hard work we do and just be as innovative as possible with how we do our fundraising and our outreach. We've not rolled out crowdfunding, which other organizations have turned to increase their fundraising capacity. We haven't developed that plan out totally yet, but probably we're going to end up rolling out some kind of crowdfunding program here very soon. So that's I think you're asking about the funding side. I think that's what we're doing to sort of cope with the economic downturn and some of the lost or reduced funding from funders across the board.
Do you get funding as an Ohio affiliate? Do you get some funding directly from the national as well as what you might raise in Ohio?
Correct, yeah. So we have gap funding in the states where our programs aren't self-subsistent, which are most of our states. Very few of our states sustain themselves with in-state funding. But about 60% of my budget is funded through state grants and fee for service type arrangements we have with organizations and counties and municipalities and things like that. And then the other 40% comes from national grants and things awarded to our organization as a whole. And again, that'll be supplemented partially by the CARES Act forgivable loan program.
Thank you. Sarah.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that this is a great opportunity. Thanks, Jane, for inviting me and bringing rural action into the conversation. Yeah, this unprecedented time certainly has impacted rural action and the community we serve. And our goal from day one, our CEO, Debbie Phillips, has been such a leader for our community in really, sounding the call for safety and, the health of our community. And I, really applaud how proactive she's been in our response as an organization. We are, our offices are close to the public, which is unfortunate. We certainly close to the public and close to our, a lot of our staff. So many of us have been working remotely, and I do miss the family nature of our organization. But we're doing our best to stay in touch as we can. And really, our organization has stayed afloat. Also, CARES Act has come in handy and kept us from, peril. We've also seen a real generous response from the funding community, the grant makers that support our work. I personally thought it was incredible how many foundations that support rural action came to us immediately and said, we understand that, you're unable to do a lot of your regular programming and, the work that you intended to do under this grant, the deliverables that were assigned to you for this cycle. There have been generous offers to forgive, certain deliverables and really to kind of help us shift focus on like the core work that needs to get done, and keeping staff on payroll and making sure that, the bases are met. And I think that's a real testament to the fact that, the philanthropic community cares about the organization's stability as much as the work that we're doing on behalf of, these communities. So, so that's good. And beyond that, I think we're doing our best to adjust to a virtual environment and staying engaged with the communities we serve. Our environmental education team has done an excellent job of taking their outdoor learning to an online platform, and they have had such engagement from students and young people across the area who still want to learn about, pond life and, nesting habits of birds. And so they're doing that virtually, and it's a great thing. But yeah, I think we're all just adjusting to a new norm and doing our best to do that as safely as possible.
Well, of course, this conversation series is an outgrowth of that as well. We had to Green Energy Ohio had to cancel and postpone many programs. We had quite a few programs scheduled for the spring. And so we decided to go virtual, and it's been a real success, and I'm very pleased with that. One of the things that we have done, of course, we're very heavily membership based, so we've extended all the memberships by 3 months, essentially the March, April, May kind of. So when I send out renewals, if there's anyone on the call who's going to be getting a membership renewal from me, it will be extended by 3 months. And that includes our business members, because this is not a good time to be asking new people for money. We have a lot of potential, I think, out there in the business community especially, but we decided to take a pause. So in terms of programming, Tristan, do you with the work that you're doing, how have you shifted that?
Great question. I think we're fortunate in that the solar industry here in Ohio was on a big growth spike moving into COVID. Things have slowed down, obviously, as the economy slowed down, and people are thinking about putting pauses on their rooftop solar projects. But Solar United Neighbors, I should probably say first, we focus primarily on helping individuals put solar on their roofs, and businesses and nonprofits put solar on their roofs. We want to solarize the country, right? That's our goal, and to help those people come together and then fight for their energy rights, continue to advocate for solar homeowners and community solar, things like that across the country. So, at least we've been able to maintain our solar co-ops that we've been running across the state. All that work, all those educational, just like you said, Jane, with your education programs, and UCR with education programs, everything that we've had to do has had to move online, which has caused some. It's difficult for somebody like me, a field guy, an organizer, to be cooped up in a room and on a computer all day and not in the field, not knocking doors, not dragging people to events. But it certainly has still allowed us to, these technologies has allowed us to continue with our program just about as it was set out for. And actually, it's allowed us to expand. Now we're running 4 co-ops simultaneously across the state, instead of doing one at a time, because we don't have the sort of geographical restrictions of me having to be somewhere to do an information event. So it's actually allowed us to expand a little bit. But on the flip side of that, yeah, people are a little more hesitant to make that investment at this time with solar. So we've seen a little bit of a slowdown there. So although our programs are still going, they're virtual, they're digital, and a little bit thin compared to months previous and past. But we're already seeing things start to pick up, which is great.
Yeah, and I think I share with both of you the frustrations of not being around the people who either your supporters and meeting new people and having that community. Sarah's on our board, and we're having virtual board meetings, and even that, we only have quarterly board meetings, but it's a chance for us all to get together, and we haven't done that since January. So it's sort of in the same vein. In addition to the pandemic, we are all going through a time of societal unrest. And again, nonprofit organizations have been at the forefront of addressing these issues even before this, but certainly as a part of what is happening today. The calls for community resilience and equity and racial and social and environmental justice. These aren't new issues for any of us, but I guess my question to you is how you are both addressing this, are you hearing from your constituents? Is it part of your message? That's my next question. This time I'll start with Sarah.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we, as ambassadors to, and as the deeply embedded organization that we are here in Southeast Ohio, I think at the core of our work is really lifting up all the voices that have been marginalized and underrepresented in region, and we, again, I give Debbie a lot of credit on, her leadership to really bring the focus on how we can be a more equitable organization and represent everyone in our community. Appalachian Ohio bears a lot of inaccurate representations of who lives here and the history that a lot of people see or think they understand about Appalachian Ohio, often a pretty inaccurate representation of the place. And we know better that this is a community that's many colors and many cultural representations. And so for us, I think, the work here in a rural place is really it's about challenging some of the notions of what is, you know, who lives in this community and their role. And I think we are really trying as an organization to not, you know, to be a representative of everyone who lives here. I think that, you know, one of the approaches, you know, my family personally has taken, we recently attended a Black Lives Matter protest, or, you know, march on Juneteenth in Chester Hill. Chester Hill is a very rural, small community, but has a rich history of resistance, and was along the Underground Railroad in this region. You know, and it's I think that what I found was that what we needed to do as a community was to really stand together and demonstrate that, you know, this is a place where we're all united in our you know, solidarity as a community. So that's something Rural Action really believes in, and we're really trying to uplift and really change the narrative around Appalachia in general. We're a far more nuanced place than a lot of people seem to think. So really trying to lift that up.
I think that's very true. I think that there is a stereotypic sort of view of Southeast Ohio, and it is much more diverse and has so much to bring to the conversation. So yeah, and Rural Action does that so well. Tristan, how about you?
Sure. Sort of a two-part answer. One, I think it was really important. I'm glad our organization acknowledged the murder of George Floyd, and that Black lives do matter, and those are the voices that are being, you know, that are rising up, and we're there to support the Black community specifically at this time. That was important to our organization as a whole. I'm really glad we made that sort of statement and stand. Beyond that statement, you know, something we've been working on up to this point, but I think we're starting to ramp up a little bit now, is our work in energy equity, making sure that we're working with organizations across the spectrum that are working in those communities, making sure that our co-ops, within our co-ops and at every level, we're trying to include voices from specifically the African American community, but from all minority communities and the frontline communities that are most impacted by things like climate change and just you know, outrageous utility costs as a portion to their income. So having those people at the table is the most important. Having people of color, people that are poor or rural at the table is just certainly something that we're going to start working on harder. And one of the ways we're doing that is partnering with organizations like Cleveland Owns, which is working on community solar projects across the Northeast Ohio region, working with the state coalition of energy groups on laws that will allow for things like community solar, more equitable solar. So starting to make solar less about, you know, home ownership and only a certain kind of caste or group of people, but trying to expand it, finding ways through legislation and partnerships to expand solar to groups that would normally not have access is something that we're, again, doing specifically now and trying to, and then including, again, those voices in those decisions. You know, we want to make sure the people that are most impacted have a seat at the table when it comes to where we are, where we operate, and how we message, right? How we communicate, how we educate may have to change a little bit as we start moving in this direction. So those are a couple of things.
Could you tell us a little bit about Cleveland Owns? I know we were invited to be a part of it, and Aaron Fisher, who's our Director of Communications, is going to be sitting in on those calls, but I don't have a lot of familiarity with it.
Sure, I've been involved from the beginning. There's Cleveland Owns is running several what they're calling solar cooperatives, different than our solar co-ops, to a different type of thing, the same name, but a wonderful thing. And they have a true co-op model where they're actually enlisting subscribers to come together, pull their resources together, and use those resources to build solar arrays that people can subscribe to, so that the community is receiving the full benefit of that solar, both the energy and the economic benefit, because we know solar is a great cheap way to produce energy, right? So they're in the fledgling stages, but that's fine. They just started, and we're excited at Sun to be helping them, partnering with them here in the very near future to help them gain subscribers, help get the word out about what they're trying to do. So they have a really interesting and a couple different innovative models. They're working on a couple models because they're in different areas, working with different sets of laws, but really excited about that work. It's going to allow people who are renters, to take advantage of clean energy, whereas in the past you have to own your home to put solar on it. So
right.
It's really neat. It's a really neat program, and we're excited to be involved.
Well, thank you. I'm excited that Green Energy Ohio will be involved as well. With this sort of, I'm going to move, there's a segue here. There's a connection, but for Tristan, you're an elected official as well as a nonprofit advocate. And why is local government so important? And I should say you're on the city council at Lakewood. How did local government become sort of the center of the activity that's taking place these days?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. I mean, one, I am infatuated with government. I love local government, obviously. I loved it enough to run for a council seat, and it's just a great. Local government touches everyone's life. It's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, in terms of government. Every day you're interacting with your local municipality somehow. So that's like the base level. If we're going to make some change, let's do it where it interacts with people's lives most, right? Where people can see that change. Let's be the leaders in this space where people can actually, so let's lead by example as governments when we're starting to change it. And local governments are actually very big when you put them together. There's several thousand here in the state, local government, 1,300 local governments that represent everybody in the state. So you add them together, that's a rather significant chunk of either, if we choose to, a significant chunk of infrastructure that can be changed for, to aid our planet, aid sustainability and resiliency of our communities. And then at the moment, with the passage of House Bill 6, with some of the dysfunction currently at the federal level, locals are where it's at. That's where you're going to see the most growth and change moving forward. Not that we're not going to be able to get stuff done at the state. We're working on some really cool legislation at the state that's going to, like for community solar, for instance. So there are things that we're going to be able to do there. But the locals are where it's at. That they need to lead, to show the way, because right now we're not sure that we're going to make the progress we need to make if we're going to, really change things at any other level.
Add to that,
yeah,
I think Tristan makes a great point. Individual communities have a lot of opportunity to really expand solar development and take on some innovative approaches to that state and federal government can't really enact. I think it's pertinent to note that this June, we finally, here in the city of Athens, were able to enact our carbon fee for solar development. And this is sort of a very innovative, first in the country with a community solar program run through an aggregation, through community aggregation. Southeast Ohio Public Energy Council was really the lead in the city of Athens to ask everyone within the SOPEC member community whether they wanted to pay just a tiny bit extra on their utility bills to support publicly installed solar on our city property. It was asked of voters by ballot, and 76% of the votership said yes, indeed, that's something we want to support. And so we are officially now collecting on behalf of that fund, and we're very excited to see that revenue really an ongoing stream for solar development in the city. And that's something that, again, we're able to do that as a community, as a very small rural community. And I think that's a real testament to how local government and a local aggregation program can really lift up solar development.
Absolutely. The Athens, I remember when it was on the ballot, and it was people were excited and amazed, and I'm so glad it worked, because a small fee, people, and we see this in polling, people are willing to pay a little bit more to get green energy themselves, or to make sure that the community has access to green energy. And I think that's a really important lesson that we can take from the vote down in Athens. I do. Tristan, how do you define local government? Because there are so many layers and levels of government in Ohio. Do you include townships and counties as well as municipalities? And actually for Sarah too, because it seems like the broader we look at the local level, I know in Granville, where I live, the township is building a brand new fire station, and that's going to have solar on it. And that was a township initiative. So I guess my question to you is in terms of how we look at local government, municipalities and counties and all that.
Sure. So yeah, local government would be defined as cities, there's about 250 cities in the state, or villages. Villages can be townships, villages. Some people consider county government as local government too, because they do some of the same services and functions. But so you'll see that name used, but formally county government is county government, and more of a function of state government. But so there's 3 separate levels. You have your state, your county, and your locals. And then obviously the federal government.
Yeah. In fact, we are trying to, and Sarah's on a planning committee with me and others, SOPEC you mentioned, to put on one of our growing local solar workshops in Athens. We had to postpone it from April, I guess, to now it's scheduled for August, but I'm not sure that that's actually going to happen, at least not in an in-person meeting. But one of the programs that I'm very proud of is our Growing Local Solar initiative with the Ohio Environmental Council, where we hold these workshops around the state. We invite local officials. I mean, it's designed for local officials to get the information they need. And, a lot of these local, I know it all started because when Denison wanted to build their solar array in Granville, the village had no zoning that applied to there were so many questions. And so we sat down with Jeremy King at Denison, and we said, I think there are probably local officials around the state who could benefit from this kind of learning experience, and everything from zoning to financing to land use. And so I'm hoping we can still do our Southeast Ohio one sometime soon, because we haven't been down there. So for Sarah, training and jobs are so important, and they're important everywhere. They're especially important in an area where there's a transition, where people are leaving the extractive industries and going elsewhere. Rural Action has teamed up with Solar Energy International to offer training to local residents, and it's supported by 2 local Athens companies who are also very strong GEO supporters, Appalachian Regional Power and Third Sun Solar. So I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that program and how you're doing and what the results have been or what you expect.
Yeah, well, so the Grow Solar Jobs Initiative kicked off this year. It's been sort of a dream of mine to do this for some time, and thankfully Athens County Foundation came through with some support for a year-long program. This allows 5 participants who are here based in Southeast Ohio and looking to work in the solar industry or currently working in the solar industry to receive some formal training through Solar Energy International, which is an online platform. They're an accreditation service for the NABCET certification and other solar certifications necessary if you want to work in the industry. The funding is supported each participant to participate in one basically just a PV 101 course, a introduction to solar. And it's been a great experience, you know, not only from practical standpoint in that, you know, these are online learning experiences. So no one, you know, we didn't really even skip a beat with getting everyone signed up and started on their coursework in the midst of COVID. And then, you know, going forward as the year carries on, we do intend to have several in-person meet and greet events if possible, where and how we can do that safely, to kind of interact with and have some on-site learning. Both Third Sun Solar and Appalachian Renewable Power have said that they are available to, you know, let us come to our warehouse or see a job site, which is wonderful. We're going to be doing a solar generator build in hopefully July, late July. We have supplies to really learn sort of the basics of building a solar generator. Jay Warmke from Blue Rock Station has, you know, a longtime solar instructor, extremely knowledgeable fellow, has produced a video as well as a book that teaches you how to build your own solar generator. So we're using that as our guide, and you know, getting ready to, you know, just have that experience and use that as a teaching tool. So yeah, so Grow Solar Jobs Initiative is a great opportunity. I think we're hoping that, you know, we'll be able to extend it into the next year and coming years as an opportunity for people to really train up and get ready to be part of the industry.
Yes. And some of you are aware that Green Energy Ohio has a partnership with the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, where, and Jay Warmke has been very involved with that as well, where we train and certify, give the test, the certification test to folks at the Richland Correctional Institute. And then upon release, we try to help them, try to place them with some of our business members. And it's really so important. There's so many folks who really could benefit from this industry. So I think that's a great program. We have a couple of questions here. Coming out of the pandemic, we have an opportunity to undertake transformations. And this sort of goes back to one of the questions we've already discussed. And the question is, what organizing should we be planning now together? What can we do to organize toward that end? Either of you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I'll say some of the work that we are doing to sort of organize, like what you mentioned, the job training programs, I think are key, kind of building a new green future, starting with the folks in the front lines who will be the workers of that, right? And training people to do this work. So we're seeing the industry expand. We're seeing solar take off, right? I think also lobbying for a more fair environment where this industry can grow. So actually organizing politically to make sure that bills that will allow for solar to grow, you know, will eventually pass here, even in Ohio, and wind for that matter, and rebutting some of these, you know, totally erroneous groups that pop up, fake grassroots groups that try to stop wind, so that we can push for, you know, more wind development here in the state. So there's things we can do, but it's going to take a lot of work, and engaging with organizations like GEO and Rural Action along the way.
I don't know if you had anything to add, Sarah, onto that one.
I think Tristan had that covered. That's good.
Thank you. And actually, the fact that you mentioned wind, we have another question about, is anyone working on the setback problem, which for those of you who may not be familiar with it, Ohio has a very egregious setback rule that makes it virtually impossible to site new wind farms. We've had some very successful ones, particularly in Northwest Ohio. And of course, we have the Icebreaker project in Lake Erie off Cleveland. And I don't know if either, obviously Solar United Neighbors is focused on solar and there's not as much wind in Appalachia. So, or do either of you have any information on what's happening with the wind setbacks? I don't think much is happening at all at the State House right now. They were focused on the pandemic and then trying to fill the budget holes that have opened up as a result of the response to the pandemic. So I don't know if anybody has anything new on that.
Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, it's because wind is not, you know, there's almost no wind here in Southeast Ohio, or I shouldn't say no wind, but no wind development here. And so, yeah, this is something I follow, and to my understanding, you know, there is real limited movement at the moment. So, Jane, I think you covered that well.
Yeah. We really need to, Ohio is at risk of falling behind our neighboring states. There's no question about that. And we need to, and this goes back to the whole question of state government, federal government versus local government. I mean, right now, our best path forward is through local government. And so I want to get back to a question for both of you. And this is something we talked about in our last conversation with Jeff Greenfield and Steve Malink. People call me with questions, but they don't want to talk to someone who's going to try to sell them something. And then you have this, as a result in part of the shutdown, the people aren't out interacting. You have all these online ads, and some of them are not just misleading, but basically fraudulent. So if they don't want to talk to a company, how do nonprofits fill that gap? I know I struggle sometimes with where to send them for accurate information. And I just wonder how both of you see nonprofits as filling that hole that exists in terms of accurate information.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's a lot, especially right now with solar specifically, there seems to be a lot of ads, a lot of companies that are not rightly taking advantage of the fact that solar has become more affordable and the average person can afford solar, and marking it up a lot and putting some really not so good financial products out there that are hurting people. And that's something that I think there's a lot of room for nonprofits like Solar United Neighbors and GEO and Rural Action and others, SIA, who can present that information in as fair a way as possible on our website through our information sessions, so that people can, once they're educated about what solar is, how it works, what to ask, you know, how to look at these ads, you know, and knowing that, you know, don't be sold here's the things to look for, here's the things you really want to make sure that an installer can do and should do, here's the numbers you're looking for, here's a baseline for what it actually costs. So just educating people as much as possible. And as far as them trusting a nonprofit, it can be difficult. We're running ads ourselves, right? We're trying to sell solar in general, so we are out there sort of stumping for solar and our co-ops. So just doubling down on the fact that we are a nonprofit, we're grant funded, we work with municipalities and counties. We've been a trusted name in this industry for a number of years, since 2007. So building that narrative, making sure people understand where we're coming from, and building that trust is all important. And there's multiple ways we can do it. But it's a great question, and we're looking for more ways to address this as well. And I think working with GEO and some of the reputable installers around the state to kind of lead that effort, it's going to be important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. There's some bad actors in Ohio and across the country that are really, I think, tarnishing the, importance and, success of solar. So I do think that more than ever, nonprofits and kind of impartial resource providers need to really be engaged and support folks who are looking at solar. I always encourage multiple quotes and,
Right.
checking in with more than one installer. Every solar installation is a custom installation, period. and therefore, you can get a few perspectives on what solar works best for you. And anytime anyone pursues solar, I think it's a learning journey, and those questions that come up, an installer is going to answer them in ways that encourage a sale, but I really think an impartial and objective voice around sizing your system and the soft costs associated with the labor and the marketing that are built into the price of your system. Find out more about that, and what are the questions you want to ask. Those are really important things to know about. So yeah. I'm glad we have these resources.
The ACES, the American Solar Energy Society, they have a list of 50 questions that you should ask before you engage a contractor to do a solar installation. And I don't know if they are on our website, but I think we should probably post them. It's a long list. But also the reputable companies won't care or will actually understand when you ask for more than one quote. And I think that's important, because if a company pushes back when you say, well, I'd like another quote, that's a bad sign. And I know Aaron and I were at the Home and Garden Show in Columbus earlier this spring, and we went to a booth of a company that's a national company, but it's doing business here in Ohio, some very odd ads on television. And within 5 minutes of talking to them, it was clear they didn't know the Ohio landscape. They were telling us things that we knew were absolutely incorrect. So I do think it's important that we all take advantage of the resources that are available to us in that regard.
Hey, Jane, can I share one thing with your
Of course, please.
Just, if you're going to get solar, the one question you ask, and it'll get the reaction to tell you everything, is how much does it cost per watt installed? That's it. Make sure you get that number. If they're not going to give you that number, they're not a reputable installer. There you go. There you go.
Well, there you go. That's, I mean, yes, in case you want to ask all 50, ask that one first, right? So I know Rural Action, your program in Rural Action, which actually you created. Rural Action brought Sarah on to create this energy piece of their broad agenda. You have a Clean Energy Pledge program. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the pledge and how it works and who can sign and all that?
Sure. Well, Rural Action recognizes that there is that conserving energy and reducing your energy use and going renewable is a process, and a multi-year process in many cases. And so because we believe in the 1-2 punch of reduce your energy use and then go renewable, our Clean Energy Pledge helps people work through that process. We work with small businesses and nonprofits and local governments mainly with the Clean Energy Pledge, and it's actually kind of an analog to our Zero Waste Pledge. So here at Rural Action, one of our other goals is to help people reduce their waste and reduce, reuse, recycle model. So both the Zero Waste Pledge as well as the Clean Energy Pledge are designed to really encourage that conservation and reduction. And I think that we're in a time currently where a lot of people are looking at the bottom line. Saving energy is an economic decision, almost more so than it is an environmental decision. So we're really encouraging people to look at those numbers and look at investments in energy conservation, efficiency, at a time when it is more than critical to be financially conscious as well as environmentally conscious.
Absolutely, and particularly for small businesses, I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying that the economics of it are what drives them. I mean, we all have different motivations, and the fact of the matter is that moving, first of all, toward energy efficiency, which I think is so important. And we talk about the energy you don't use is the cleanest and the safest and the cheapest. So let's all start using less. And then that's another thing about a solar installer. Many of them will say, have an energy audit first. Know, get down to what you absolutely need to have to use before you come to us for an installation. Now, that's, there are others who would just love to over install, but I think it's very important that people take into consideration how much they use. So we're at 1 o'clock, so we have about 15 more minutes. If people have any questions, I know there have also been some comments added to the chat link that has other information, links to websites and things. So if people want to check that chat area out. Green Energy Ohio has for 17 years been a partner with ASUS on the Green Energy Ohio Tour and as part of the National Solar Tour. Unfortunately, this fall, because of a number of things, first of all, the concerns about health and safety of our hosts and our visitors, the organization canceled the tour for this fall. We took a pause. But I know that the National Solar Tour is still going forward and that Sun is a partner with ASUS, but it's going to be all virtual, as I understand. So I don't know, Tristan, do you want to tell us a little about that?
Yeah, the National Solar Tour, which is a great event. Usually we host it every year in late September, early October. And I know GEO has a very similar event. We've done them together in the past, and I think we'll be doing some things together here in the future, which I'm really excited about. But this year we're still going to run the National Solar Tour, except it's going to be September 28th to October 4th, and that's going to be an all virtual type event where people are going to be able to show off their systems at home on different days. It's the 25th anniversary too of the tour, so it's kind of unfortunate we can't have the full-fledged, having people over, the real physical touch event. But we're excited that it's going to be something new, and hoping that people can go sign up at nationalsolartour.org to be hosts and show off your solar system on these web events, and encourage your friends to join these webinar conferences where you can share your solar system with them. And we're also going to solicit as many people as possible to come watch you and talk about your solar system and meet you and your solar system in your house. And also going to be showcasing EVs, electric vehicles, in this year's solar tour. So we're pumped. It's going to be different. It's going to be virtual, but it's still going to be pretty cool. Again, September 28th through October 4th.
And another, actually, Green Energy Ohio is partnering with Generation 180, which is one of your national partners, to highlight solar schools throughout Ohio. We're identifying schools in Ohio that have solar installations, and we're going to be encouraging them to do a virtual tour and talk about how they came to the decision and how they paid for it and what it's meant in terms of an educational opportunity for their students and for their community. And I think October 1st is National Solar School Day during that week. So we're very pleased to still have a piece of the tour that we are involved with. And I think it's so important that the whole solar school arena is just really important to have again, local government. School boards are local government, so we need to keep that in mind as well. Let me see if there's any other question. Here's a question. What experience have either of you had working with faith communities and associations to develop solar advocacy or clean energy advocacy more broadly?
Well, I can speak to that somewhat. Rural Action's affiliated with Ohio Interfaith Power and Light, which is both national and state-based organization that has done a lot of deep and important work for a long time with faith-based communities that encouraging members of the congregation to work on efficiency as well as renewable energy development, and then you know, our engagement there has certainly been around, you know, just being a resource on behalf of the region. So if, you know, there have been several churches as well as a synagogue in the region, both have, you know, come to us and said, you know, what can we offer in terms of support to members of our community that are looking to, you know, reduce energy use. And I think that it's, you know, it seems to me as though we're, those communities have been, have heard the call, and it's common to have whole congregations really align and rally around, you know, and use incredibly innovative approaches to community solar for their church, their physical church facilities, or, you know, buildings, and then, you know, supporting community members that want to go solar but may not have the means. So it's, you know, to me it seems like it always impresses me how many how faith-based community can really rally around solar and energy reduction. So
Yeah.
Good answer.
Have you had any other experience, Tristan? Or
Yeah, well, I can talk about like the specifics that how we interact, and this is more of a programmatic thing, but it actually expands into advocacy a little bit. But our solar co-ops, churches are great partners for our solar co-ops, and they've partnered with us for church groups and have gone solar through the co-ops, which can be excellent tools. When you put solar on a church, first off, a church building that is always consuming energy to keep it cool during the summer, you know, it's a great advocate. It's a great way to use solar. It's a good candidate for solar in a lot of cases. Big roofs that are usually fairly steep, you know, always good for solar. And then having that kind of display on the roof and that kind of endorsement on the roof of a building like that, a lot of times in places that, you know, can be rural, churches are everywhere. I think this is a phenomenal way to run the banner up on green energy, and we need to be focusing more on faith communities and rural communities in general. So I'm really glad to, you know, again, be here, and glad for the work that Rural Action is doing along those lines.
And of course, there's a real connection in terms of protecting God's creation. And there is a whole group called the Young Evangelicals for Clean Energy. So we need to understand that piece of it. I think Bob McAllister, do you have a question? Did you raise your hand?
Yes, I did raise my hand.
Hello, Bob.
I'm from down here in Lawrence County, so I was very much struck by Sarah's comments about people not understanding the diversity of Southern Ohio and Appalachian Ohio. In fact, when an awful lot of folks think that everybody down here is a farmer, but in fact, all along the river, when the steel industry collapsed, towns like Ironton, where I'm from, died. I actually ran for office for county commissioner in 2018, and partially because of my work with Vice President Gore's group, Climate Reality, I wanted to use pushing green energy as a way to kickstart rural Ohio's economy. And I realized that it's probably going to take an alignment of national and state policy along with local policy. But what I really wanted to ask was, have people been thinking about, is this a really viable way to start for rural communities to really start to get those economies moving again, especially in areas, like I said, where the steel industry is really hurt?
yeah, that's been a very tough nut to crack. Ironton and other communities in our region who either have long ago been impacted by the shift in, you know, jobs away from extractive industries, or are currently, you know, in the middle of that shift. You know, it's a deep challenge, and one that, you know, takes a lot of forms. What does the economic development model going forward look like? And I know there's been quite an effort, certainly around utility scale solar, the Highland County project, and others that have, really had an uphill climb to seek approval and really pencil out economically. When you look at how do you build utility scale solar, it really is the three-legged stool of, the right site, close to the necessary infrastructure, plus, an affordable land. But then you also need an off-taker, a manufacturer, or some high energy using facility. And, in regions where, those manufacturing facilities are gone, can we both spur the manufacturing side of things? Could we be producing elements for the solar supply chain, whether that's modules or that's racking or that's, all the component parts? How do we grow that while also then, building these utility scale solar sites? And I applaud everyone who's been a part of that for now 4, 5, 6, 10 years, trying to really jumpstart the manufacturing side along with the generation side in Southeast Ohio. Boy, it's been heartbreaking. If you follow some of those, some of the ebbs and flows of the, Power Siting Board and the PUCF's response, and it's like reading a very difficult, novel, and like, oh, I don't want that to happen, But yeah, to your point, I think, the approach is so multi-pronged and ongoing, and it's long, deep, hard work. And, I'm hopeful that we can continue to work towards the growth of manufacturing and the growth of utility scale solar in Southeast and South Central Ohio.
Well, I think we're getting toward the end of our hour, and I wondered if either of you had some final thoughts to offer to our audience today. And obviously, I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing. This has been a great conversation, as well as thank everyone who signed in. But is there anything you'd like to say here at the end?
Just thank you. Thank you all for taking the time. I mean, this is wonderful. I will just throw out our website out there. I think somebody had private messaged me asking about our co-op. Just go to our website, solarunitedneighbors.org/Ohio. Check us out. I'm not going to spend too much time, getting into that here. I think that's what we're here specifically for, but would love you to check us out and learn more about our organization.
Yeah, I'll echo that. It's wonderful to have an opportunity to talk and see everyone and just, catch up. And yeah, ruralaction.org, also a great resource. And we, beyond sustainable energy, our focus is, broad, and we have a lot of great opportunities for engagement and getting involved, and of course become a member. Also become a member of Green Energy Ohio if you aren't already, so we can keep bringing you this great work.
Thank you.
Commercial break in there.
And I send out a thank you to all of the folks who have signed up for these, so I will add those links to my email. Our next conversation is July 23rd. It is the academic perspective with Gilbert Michaud from Ohio University and Melanie Knowles from Kent State. So I encourage you to watch for the announcement of that. And I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday weekend coming up. We're headed into July, and I'm very excited about all the work that all of our organizations are doing and the partnerships. We could not do it alone. Mm-hmm. Collaboration is the name of the game among nonprofits, and then our business supporters and our individual supporters. We have a great community out there, and I just want to thank everyone for being part of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Bye-bye.
Bye.